most of the content we stream or we down come from facilities that look like this. This is just the interior of a data center. So this is what the interior of a data center looks like. This is panels of servers. These are the network cables. This internet exchange points. So whenever we access the internet, our content has to come through an internet exchange point to us through our network service provider. But there's a challenge with data centers. That's many large number of servers requires cooling. We use water, a lot of water is used to cool those servers. A data center being constructed means we need to get a lot of land, but the main challenge is that the large amount of water being used to cool them means that water, which is already short, can become even more, the scarcity increases. So this is just, this is an image of the person I've removed. Please, though a country has been mentioned, this is not meant to create any geo bias. It's not my intention to create any geo bias. This problem is occurring everywhere in the world. It's not peculiar to any country. This is just an image of someone from a news site complaining about the quality of water next to a data center. When the quality of water is affected, then plants can get affected. Processes that require water can also get affected. When we see water quality going down, we could have a large number of different conditions that could happen. Again, this is not meant to indict any country. Please, I'm not indicting any country. This is a problem that occurs anywhere in the world where we have data centers in large numbers. Another challenge with these data centers is noise. If we have a data center that has more than 100 servers, we want to power them. We operate large farms, large electronic systems. You have a lot of human. There's a lot of work being done in this area to make sure that the sound, the noise from increased sound levels go down. But generally, neighbors that are still close to a data center experience a high level of noise. And noise, sound levels above a certain above the human health threshold can lead to quite some form of illnesses too. Cardiovascular related illnesses, mood shifts, a lot of conditions could arise from that as well. And the last one, this is also a big challenge, is if an operator wants to establish a data center, they need a lot of land. So, and land is scarce. They buy a lot of land. When this land is bought and they use it for a data center, it then means it's not available for housing. If they're not making land anymore and somebody buys up a lot, it means there's less land available for housing. Usually these days we have solutions like this for the housing. Tall buildings, it's high human density. And when we have high human density, this could be a problem as well. Quite a number of, I got this information from this literature now. Where you have high population density, you could have different types of illnesses in large numbers, just because the population density is high and there's high contest for human living resources. So in summary, if this data revolution is not well managed, it could cost us a lot, reduce access to quality drinking water. It could lead to poor health outcomes. Again, I must clarify at this point, I'm not saying that terrestrial data centers are all evil. I'm not saying we should ban them totally, no. With the advent of terrestrial data centers, a lot of economic growth has also been recorded. So what I'm advocating for is that we should manage it. Where we may see that this type of challenges could arise from large or dense terrestrial data center rollouts could arise, we could consider putting the data centers in space. Data centers in space basically means we have small set of server farms or computing solutions, put them on satellites, and then we put it in space. That can provide some additional data, access demand, without necessarily making worse the challenges that have been highlighted before. And part of the benefits of putting these data centers in space is that there's reduced reliance on Earth's water resources. There's reduced reliance on Earth's land resources. The noise pollution or noise contribution is zero in this case. And by doing that, we can still ensure that we continue to record advances in digital technology. So this is what a data center in space will look like. These are just impressions of what a data center in space will look like. This approach also has challenges. A part of the challenges we have is how, if we put all of this in space, especially this type of large systems, how do we cool it? In research, the short-term solution that has been proposed is to use heat pipes connected to radiators. So that is an easy engineering solution that can be used in the short to near term. In my own research, I'm considering using water, but putting them in space is technologically feasible today, especially with use of radiators and its pipes is technologically feasible. So what are the benefits? We reduce the demand and pressure. For Africa, it reduces the demand and pressure on the fresh water resources. Data center cooling uses fresh water, not just any type, fresh water. By using space-based data centers, we reduce the demand and pressure on freshwater resources. We reduce the demand and pressure on land resources by using space-based data centers. Because of reduced exposure to noise, health outcomes can be expected to improve. And because of the low demand for water, we can significantly expect that more water will be available for agriculture. So in conclusion, emergence of data technology and the need to develop AI is why we need to increase investment in data centers. So like I said earlier, terrestrial data centers are still important. So what I'm just advocating for in this presentation is we could find a way to merge space-based data centers, incorporate them with terrestrial data centers to minimize, or if in certain contexts, in certain deployment scenarios, eliminate the advantages. Putting data centers in space can alleviate the Earth-related challenges because we don't live in space. Humans don't live in space yet. So whatever happens there, it may affect us, but it's not as close as the effect it will have with a system on Earth with us. And then this is beneficial for Africa, especially in high population density regions where there's a lot of young people wanting to access the internet, and housing demand is also very high. So I acknowledge my institution and my research group, the French South African Institute of Technology and Cape Peninsula University of Technology, and also express gratitude to the organizers of the National Space Conference and to every listener. I've been walking around with a sling for since yesterday, so I appreciate everyone being generous in their comments about me, and I would like to say thank you, and I would also like to say that it's not the data centers that caused me to wear a sling. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ayode. I just want to check, do we have Slido? If you can screen it quickly, please. So we can put our questions on Slido. Then we are able to review those questions or inputs coming through. So let's all connect. The number is there. It's going to go quickly. Okay. So I am going to now call the next speaker, Dr. George Chirima. And we were busy chatting before the session, and she tells me that George means farmer. And also that Chirima also means farmer. So we were then saying she's a double farmer. Okay. Dr. George Chirima works for the Agricultural Research Council, Natural Resource and Engineering. And his title for this afternoon is about harnessing satellite data, combating rabies in the northern South Africa. So he is a professor, Chirima, and he's a research team manager at the Research Council and affiliated as well to the University of Pretoria. And his research covers statistics. Thank you. Yes. I just want to set the time rules. You only have 10 minutes, and when I raise my hand, it means your time is up. Thank you.
She's changing rules in the middle of the game. All right. Good afternoon, colleagues. Yeah, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me. And I would like to talk about combating rabies. Why that topic? Every now and then we are required to demonstrate the value of Earth observation. So we've been thinking, how can we demonstrate to our principals the value of Earth observation? So we wanted to find where government is putting some money. And then we can demonstrate to them that there is value with Earth observation. The second question I would like to talk about is, we have data in South Africa. Some of us or some of other organizations have been collecting data for years. And that data is not talking to other data sets. But suddenly when those data sets begin to talk to each other, you realize there's value. Government can save money. So I'm not a biologist or a rabies person, but I collaborated with colleagues, Dr. Mohano and Professor Sabeta. These are the real biologists. Me, I just come from numbers. I play the numbers and using their data. And then, of course, to my passion, upload the Earth observation data and see what happens. Right. So, where does the value come in? First, when you have your own data sets that you are hiding somewhere, or that is staying somewhere and nobody's using it, if you just put a satellite data on that, just as a backbone, you have value that can help you in deciding. And some of the value, in fact, in rabies, you can now start tracking the disease in real time, because now you have the infection that's going on, and you have the Earth observation data that will tell you where it is. You also start now looking at where do we have most of these problems. And then if you're a government that has scarce resources, then you can prioritize what to do in those areas. So it's a good way of saving money. So when now we have an era that we have now of artificial intelligence, then you can improve your predictions. You can improve the way you can visualize your data. So these are the benefits that we can market to save money. By the way, you know that disease like rabies, the government puts a lot of money in controlling them. So when you put Earth observation, then you know where to go. You don't just spray money all over the place. You now target specific areas. So that's where the value is that I am hoping to convince you guys. Right. So this is just a background to know that people are dying because of rabies. In South Africa, about 20 die every year. You might think, no, this is a dream, but this is the truth. Mostly the people are dying in rural areas where reporting is not so efficient, or they are underreported, or maybe the reasons for dying is something else. But basically the common denominator with my colleagues is that there will be some dog bites that are there. So the government is not oblivious to this. It's putting money through the provincial departments to try and combat this disease. There is rabies vaccines. Actually, you wonder we shouldn't be dying because the vaccine is there. But why are we dying? It's simply because data is sitting somewhere and some other data is sitting somewhere. We are not bringing together these data sets so that they can talk to us and we can prioritize things. So, what did my colleagues tell me, what we know about South Africa? All those epidemics happened, or outbreaks for rabies, and the red spots, of course, like my favorite color, it means there's problems there. And people have been dying over the years. You can see all those information. That's information that's been collected and archived. And nothing has been underlined. So the data is there, but it is underutilized. So with the coming in of AI, we have all these fancy tricks that you can do, and suddenly, boom, you can now go to the provinces and tell them that, look, this is the municipality or this is the town where you have problems. This is the red spot. Every year, whenever there's an outbreak, it stems from there. What is the reason? Perhaps it's because there is more transmission between animals and people when there is, for example, droughts, when there is, for example, an event that triggers it. And then you start telling the colleagues and saying, you have been putting so much thousands in this area, but you're putting them in the wrong place. For example, if you had to put things on the blue areas, then you're just wasting money there. Now you tell them exactly where to put money, and you can go further, which my colleagues in virology can tell you that, for example, out of 10 people, if we vaccinate 3, only 3, then you stop the transmission. So these are ideas that the government needs as it plans the future. And these are ideas where we can demonstrate that instead of vaccinating 300,000, you vaccinate only 30. Then you save on the rabies vaccine. So those in authority can start picking up the discussion, seeing the value of what Earth observation is doing. And of course, seeing the value of making the data sets and people communicating among themselves. So these are just the ideas that I emphasized at the beginning, that when data sets start to talk to each other, there is value in saving money. There is value in making a decision. Where do you rush to first? And whom do you approach when you go there? So it's important to understand that although we are dreaming big about this big AI, we can start in-house. There is enough information to do something with AI, with the data that we have. So we will make a difference in campaigning against some of these issues. So I have some suggestions there of what, for example, changes that need to be produced by our leaders, that there should be communication, it should be deliberate, not people talking in the corridors. I think if you are collecting data for the state or everyone, there should be some deliberate formatting of the data and the request that you put it somewhere where people can access it, so that we don't have these localized obstacles to accessing that. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Dr. George. Let's not forget to post our comments or questions on Slido. Our next speaker will be Mr. Obokeng Ramkomose. And you also have 10 minutes. Okay?
Right, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm gonna walk you through how we use satellite data to detect water leaks, but then this method is not new at all. And what I want to emphasize from this talk is to how the existing providers of this kind of service are sort of taking us for a ride in a way. But before I get into that, let me start first with getting into the leaks. So if you look into this first picture there, this is what a leak looks like when it's buried underground. We don't really have a problem with leaks that appear on the surface because anyone walking by will just report that and it will be repaired quickly. But then if you look at the second picture there, that's what you see when there's a leak underground and there's no appearance on the surface. And over time, that leak increases the moisture of the soil, and eventually you get into a place where the soil gets saturated and maybe gets washed away and collapse, exposing the pipeline. Once that pipeline has no supporting soil underneath, it will either break and cause a major burst, which leads to major water losses, and it's very expensive to repair. But then these leaks are not really the problem because our water infrastructure is quite old, so we should be expecting leaks as part of daily sort of operations of the pipe. What the real problem is, how do we find these leaks before they increase into major bursts? So now, rainwater, which is one of the water boards in South Africa, uses 4 main methods to detect these kinds of leaks. The first would be a guy walking with a listening stick. So he'll put on noise-canceling headphones and walk the line to try and figure out if there's a leak there. But it's not really effective if you're managing 3.5 thousand kilometers of pipeline. Other water boards use dogs. So these dogs will sniff the chlorine from the treated water. But that's also still relatively new, and you still need someone working behind that dog, and it's still an issue if you're gonna monitor 3,500 kilometers of pipeline. The newest technology is what is called smart bowls. So they install these bowls into the pipelines, and then they flow with the water, and wherever they detect a leak, there'll be receivers on the surface. But these are very expensive. So again, covering 3,500 kilometers of pipeline is almost impossible. So now we have satellite solution. A satellite will cover any area you want, but the guys who are providing us with this service now are charging 9,800 per kilometer. If you look at this table here, you can see that the satellite solution is still the cheapest. So it looks a bit reasonable from this perspective. But if you're saying you're monitoring 3,500 square kilometers, it amounts to about close to 30 million. So it's still unreasonable. So we went to ask ourselves, why is the price this heavy? Because I mean, the satellite data we use is free. So maybe the problem comes in from the processing, or maybe they're using some kind of exclusive method that no one knows about. So we went to check into that, but there's really nothing exclusive or groundbreaking that is being used. These methods are available for anyone to find out. And I'm also confident enough to say that even though this is sort of our business, we can give you a step-by-step guide as to how this is done. So there's no real reason why the prices should be this high. When we looked at about the 8 companies that provide this service, we found that they use a lot of fluff to sort of exaggerate the value. Well, not the value, because I mean, there's always going to be value in detecting leaks, but to sort of make it sound more complicated than it actually is. I mean, why would you need a patented algorithm for something that someone has already developed before you? Those algorithms are available for most people to use. The data we use from ALOS 2, the Japanese themselves tell you, we give you this data because we believe it will help the development of mankind and improve anything related to do with the environment. So we go there, take the data for free, take someone's algorithm, and then we put in a crazy price and start saying, yeah, no, but it's proprietary, it's cutting edge, and all those things. And how is it that 8 companies doing the same thing can claim that they have developed a groundbreaking method? So we decided, we can also play that game, Mus. So we said, okay, it's fine. We're not gonna do anything that's groundbreaking. We're gonna go a different approach. So we decided we're gonna use it. You're gonna use all those methods that we've developed, and from there, we can develop our own AI-driven machine learning groundbreaking platform. So we started with a retrospective analysis. We approached random people in the community to say, if you run into a leak, please take a picture, send us a location, and then we'll assess that area of interest and see what we can find and if it's possible for us to detect that leak. But we saw that this is kind of a problematic approach because we will always see what we want to see. And it's better if we can sort of work backwards where we don't know if there's a leak or not and try to find it. So we did that with some ground truthing. After refining our workflow, we decided, let's see if we can randomly find spots where the leak isn't coming to the surface yet. So we created about 100 areas of interest, and we went to them one by one with a moisture probe. So out of those 100, we had an accuracy of about 71%, which are those companies that we checked, they were claiming about 85%. So we thought, okay, we're not there yet, but it's a sign that our science is still solid, but not 100%. We still need more verification. So as we stand now, we decided we're gonna do another 100 points to see if we can get it to above 85%. Because once we have it at 85%, then we can say, okay, let's do all those steps we took, develop an algorithm from that, and develop a model that we can use that model to move it from being focused on a local area and maybe into a regional and eventually a national sort of integration project. Thank you.
Thank you, Obagang. Obagang is a co-founder of Field 7. Field 7, a South African geospatial company using drone satellite technologies to monitor water and waste infrastructure. His work focuses on applying Earth observation tools to support engineers and asset managers in planning, maintenance, and risk management for water, and tailing dams, ash dams, and pipelines. So now we understand his topic in terms of the field serve. Okay, so we move to our fourth presenter, Mr. Fawaz Davis, from Astrophica Technologies. He will be talking about iMove, integrating satellite and ground data for precise mapping of invasive alien plant species. So he is driven by a lifelong fascination with astronomy And Mr. Davis landed his first internship at Astrophica Technologies and now leads a data application team. And he holds a BSc in mathematics and a strong scientific foundation. So he develops Earth observation applications that address agent societal challenges outside of work. He is an outdoor enthusiast and passionate about camping, hiking, all the things outside. Mr. Davis, you have your 10 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. So just to try and keep with the time, I'll take you quickly through iMove. It's a project based on, or it's basically our journey involving invasive alien plant species. But before I get into that, just a quick intro on who we are, Astrophica Technologies, founded by Jesse and Khalid in 2018, driven by a passion to advance development of space technology in Africa. However, recently they have explored data applications, and after a few pilot projects, they realized that there is more to space than just engineering, and without the downstream, there's no point to the upstream. So our first encounter with invasive alien plant species started when a client approached us and wanted to know more about invasives in the Waterberg region in Limpopo, a very water scarce region plagued by thirsty invasives. And through our research, we found that there's this big data gap when it comes to invasives in South Africa. The latest national data set on invasives is more than 15 years old, and the level or the resolution is too coarse to map anything accurately. So this sparked an idea for us, and we've been developing our application for a couple of years. But fast forwarding a few years to last year, when we were privileged enough to partner with NEOS and basically restart our project with the objectives of collecting sampling data, developing classification maps, spreading awareness of invasive alien plant species, and also exploring what the biomass-driven economy of invasives looks like. Our region of interest was the Grabouw-Kleinmond-Bottrefie area in the Western Cape, mainly due to its proximity to the Steenbras Dam, its history of reported invasives, and also its history of forestry plantations involving pine trees, which is also an invasive plant. One of the key requirements for our project was finding a suitable collaborator, and this turned out to be one of the most challenging aspects of the project for us. We searched for more than 6 months for a suitable collaborator. We contacted many organizations from DFFE to SANBI to Cape Nature, and no one could really point us in the direction of a local organization that actively deals with invasives in the area. It was by pure chance that we found or came across the Kogelberg Biosphere organization, and this was very exciting as they fulfilled all the criteria we needed for a collaborator. They were actively engaged in removing invasives in the area. We were fortunate enough during one of our visits to meet with them in field while they were clearing invasives, and what we learned and the insights we gained was so significant that if we met them before we actually did our sampling, we would definitely change some aspects of our methodology. Our sampling was basically divided into 3 phases. The first phase was understanding our baseline data, which we got from the iNaturalist data platform. And then our second phase of sampling was basically scouting our region of interest based on our baseline data, shortlisting sampling areas, and also testing our methodology for the first time. And then our final phase of sampling was actually collecting all our sampling data and also rigorously testing Q-Field, which is the application we used to collect our sampling data. Another key aspect for the project was to engage with the local communities within our area of interest. And so we set up a workshop where we invited local community members as well as conservation organizations, and it was well received. Part of the attendees that attended was the Kogelberg Biosphere Field Team, which consisted of local community members from underprivileged communities, and these are the people that were actually doing the invasive clearing of the plants. So once we collected our data and cleaned it up and prepared it, we then plugged it into our model, which was an MLP deep learning model. We also used vegetation indices and topographic data, and using a 64-16-20 split on our training, testing, and validation, we achieved an accuracy of about 84%, and this was based on Sentinel-2 data. Our biomass estimation model was an empirical model based using the output of our in classification model, as well as JEDI gridded biomass model data, and then refined using Sentinel-1 and the ESA land cover dataset. These are static maps of the results we have. On the left-hand side is the invasives classification map, which is just the distribution of the various invasive species. And then on the right-hand side is the biomass estimation map for those species that we detected. On the bottom right is a link to a publicly accessible platform, which is a live map of our results, which is more interactive and interesting than the static maps you see on screen. In the background of this image is basically the platform where you can go around and check out and see the results. So maybe just some key highlights of our project. We successfully demonstrated mapping invasives using machine learning, and we also rigorously tested Q-Field, which we hope holds potential to involve citizens for reporting invasives, as this would help mapping them in the future. Then some of the not-so-goods of our project, misclassifications within our model point to room for improvement, not only in our model, but also in our sampling methodologies, and then also resolution limitations when it comes to satellite data. Using Sentinel-2, there is a limitation on what you can detect, what species you can detect at certain densities. And then one of the most challenging things we came across dealing with invasives was that every organization works in their own silos. So when we entered the field, we discovered there were 3 organizations actively clearing invasives, and none of them were communicating with each other, and neither could their parent organizations point us to them when we had meetings with them. And so this is kind of counterproductive to dealing with the issue of invasive alien plant species. Some of the future work for us is rebuilding our model and modeling it on high-resolution satellite data, as well as exploring alternative models. Lastly, I'd just like to thank our team and our partners, DSTI, Lulu and Christelle at NEOS, and Corley at the Kogelberg Biosphere. I hope that this presentation did bring some awareness to the invasives issue that we have, and also the issues in the industry that we face. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. There's quite a lot of questions coming through to Slido, but I would still like to receive more. Let's now go to our next presenter, Ms. Nandi Mtetwa. She's coming from the Research Institute for Innovation and Sustainability, and she will be talking to us about simulating disaster before it strikes, Earth observation and AI-driven risk modeling for climate resilience in South Africa. So she is engagement manager at RIS, and where she leads projects at the intersection of EO, data analytics, innovation strategy, and she works extensively in the African continent on various initiatives that translate to space-based intelligence into practical tools for decision-making, disaster preparedness, and climate resilience. So she also holds a portfolio that includes an African Earth Observation Challenge, multiple GIS-driven risk modeling project. Well, she's passionate about African-led solutions and a champion in terms of collaboration between space agencies, research institutes, and communities to build an inclusive, fully ready innovation ecosystem. So, Sisi, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that comprehensive introduction. My presentation will be centered around tailing storage facilities, known as TSFs. Where I am from, that is Springs, there's at least 3 of these giants around us, and I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to do if they ever get breached. In South Africa, we have over hundreds of these, mainly holding tens of millions of cubic meters of mine waste, and these giant structures are often right next to communities as seen in the images attached. In 2022, Yegersfontein, I think, was a big wake-up call for all of us, and the disaster showed that what happens when abnormal rainfall meets engineering failure, so that is toxic slurry, homes destroyed, as well as ecosystems poisoned. At RIS, we believe that disasters don't just wait for response plans. Foresight is the only way to move faster than the flood. So, once a dam fails, floods move faster than response systems can react. And in this instance, in Yegersfontein, communities had minutes, not hours, unfortunately, but then it was too late. The first hours determine not only the lives saved, but it also dictates how infrastructure, ecosystems, as well as economies withstand the shock afterwards. Without foresight and simulation, every decision is delayed, every consequence magnified. Foresight shifts the timeline, so instead of waiting for the breach to happen, we move forward and we anticipate it with data as well as satellite imagery. By simulating disasters before they strike, we give communities, governments, and companies the ability to mark evacuation points and routes, to reinforce critical infrastructure, as well as prepare ecosystems for recovery afterwards. This is the heart of our work, which was done in Sekhukhune, as I will show shortly, and we believe that we should not just be responding, but we should also be ready. Our work in Sekhukhune was built on co-designing and trust building. We worked hand in hand with engineering teams, so making sure we are integrating and assessing the integrity of the TSFs itself, that we are also looking at the environmental aspect, that is conducting impact assessment of what we are presenting and the solution we are developing, looking at health and safety, that is strengthening emergency response plans, because these are the people that need to design the evacuation and the saving of those people in case the dam is breached. We also looked at the socio-economic development aspect, so ensuring that community needs were central because we believe that you aren't solving for the fact that you're a scientist and you can do this and it is cool tech, but we are doing this because we want to save lives at the end of the day. The outcomes thereof were defined assembly points, evacuation routes, as well as communication strategies that were practical and community-owned and immediately usable. This ensured that simulation became living tools and not reports on a shelf that are forgotten long afterwards when the project is closed. At REES, at the center of our GIS analysis and the solutions that we develop, we use what we call a PI model, putting people at the center of it all. So that stands for people, infrastructure, as well as environment, to understand disaster risk as an interconnected system and not just looking at something in isolation. So in terms of people, looking at the household, schools, clinics, and gathering places where crowds would most likely be. Looking at infrastructure, that is roads, bridges, power lines, pump station, as well as mining facilities. Lastly, looking at the environment, that is rivers, wetlands, farmlands, as well as soils. Disasters really hit one dimension alone, which is why we are building a solution that is comprehensive and meets the needs of the communities from end to end. Understanding that a washed-up bridge, for example, will halt in evacuation, a contaminated river poisons farmland, and then a damaged clinic leaves people without care. This overlap is where risk turns into crisis and where foresight matters the most. We then looked at high-resolution data, but we also looked at other kinds of data to marry and put into our simulation. Our approach combined multiple streams of intelligence to make the Sekhukhune simulation more than just a flat map, more than just a static simulation, more than just a report. So we also then looked at drone surveys that gave 10-centimeter detail on settlements, tailings wall, as well as access to roads. We looked at high-resolution EOS imagery that was at 10-centimeter resolution, which captured land cover, topography changes across the border landscape. We then also looked at hydrological and engineering models projecting how velocity, arrival times, as well as inundation depths would affect the flood flow, as well as the zone of inundation. Lastly, we look at population and infrastructure data sets, which we acquired from Stats SA, according to the latest census, where we revealed where people lived, moved, and depended on critical services. We believe that integrating these into a layer model, we could move from where water flows to where, who is at risk, how fast the risk is coming, and what to do. The simulation took into account 8 scenarios. Those who are familiar with the TSF know that it can breach from the east or from the west. So we looked at a breach from either side of the TSF. We looked at conditions under a sunny weather. That means there isn't a lot of rain. We also looked at when it is rainy, because we know more water flow means a bigger and more powerful flood. In addition to this, we also added 4 more scenarios that looked at future modeling. So we used Thyssen and Vonaroy modeling alongside 30-year simulations for population growth, knowing that the current situations will not always stay the way they are, but we'll need to take into account, we need to plan for the future generation as well, including new infrastructure that appeared after the initial baseline, which was captured through EO change detection. Hopefully you can see very well. So the flood that you are seeing, the small dots on the communities, those appeared after we had done the baseline. The red came 3 months after the baseline. The blue came 6 months after the baseline. These were informal structures that were encroaching into the surface area of the mining rights. This meant that the people originally planned for were much more than anticipated, which means all the emergency planning needs to take into account all those additional people. This one. I want to play it.
Oh, you want to play
Yes.
the video?
Yes.
What's the play video? Press next.
So what you are seeing here is a depiction of the first hour, which decides survival. The simulation does go up to the 12th hour, which shows the full ecological cost. While we were given an initial zone of influence, we discovered at the end that the actual inundation area was far-reaching beyond what was planned, beyond what was anticipated. This is what we mean when we say that the simulation should take into account all those elements that I had mentioned earlier to make sure that the emergency planning and the responses are comprehensive and take into account everything that can happen along the journey of the flood. As you can see here, there was a river that compounded the effects of the flow of the floods, and in yellow, those are all the villages that are interacting with the flood, named as well as counted up to what the census data said was people at risk. In conclusion, from data to resilience, transforming foresight into African-led preparedness. We believe that EO-based hydrological models show widespread flood but contamination risk. Community mapping reveals exposure, housing types, as well as evacuation routes. Housing types is very important in terms of informal structures like shacks that would be easily washed away, whereas solid structures like proper houses would be able to withstand a certain amount of flow. Critical infrastructure mapped for reinforcement and redundancy, that is anti-flood designs into some of the infrastructure should a breach happen. Because in these type of situations, we know that it is not a matter of if, but a matter of when. Compounded with climate change and extreme weather that we are getting more rainfall than we are usually used to, we are at risk. All communities that have these TSFs in their communities are at risk of being affected in one way or another. And as I said, as one of the people that live in such communities, I have absolutely no idea what to do if and when that happens. So practical actions from the simulation are their flood-proofing infrastructure, pre-assembly points and signage. That is, people should know where to go and how to get there. That includes evacuation drills with clear routes, and also understanding that this is not just for Sekukune, but it is a scalable playbook for Africa, and knowing that African institutions can lead globally in context-specific Earth observation resilience solutions. So context is very important instead of just applying models that are one size fits all as is with other solutions that are available at the moment. Lastly, lessons scale beyond mining. This was for mining, but floods can happen anyway, anytime. National and continental resilience is important, and African-led Earth observation and artificial intelligence leads to predictive governance and inclusive resilience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Mtetwa. We are now moving to our sixth presenter. There is a slight change, it's a replacement. So our initial presenter in the program is not able to present to us, and therefore we have Dr. Brilliant Peja from the Water Research Commission, will be presenting on the same topic. Okay. We'll be presenting on the satellite-driven assessment of range productivity in Blaubeek municipality in a changing climate. And I must indicate that he is affiliated to University of Limpopo as an academic. So, Dr. Peja, please do come.
Thank you very much, Chair, for this opportunity. Today, the student found an opportunity to do a revenge by giving me a short notice to come and present on his behalf. He's scheduled to graduate in September. This is part of his work. All right. The area we're talking about is blowback, climatologically known for a low rainfall average annually, while it is a livestock production hub, mostly for the rural farmers. So rangelands constitute essential ecosystems that supports biodiversity, sustain rural livelihoods, and contribute significantly to global food security. The intricate balance between these landscapes, however, is increasingly challenged by the changing climate. And farmers use these rangelands as a vital component of livestock grazing. So this work focused on examining the dynamics of rangelands, looking at the productivity and sustainability in blowback municipality within the context of changing climate for 20 years, 2001 up until 2022. Although 20 years climatologically is a very short period, but in terms of dynamics and the impacts thereof on the productivity, they are very crucial. The purpose of this work was to characterize the state of the rangelands in terms of their productivity, looking at the vigor as a response to the climatic variables, and also to assess their resilience thereof after being subjected to grazing, and then highlight areas that are vulnerable to degradation. And this is, as you would understand, the nature of the farmers there is done in the most simplified way possible, where it's easy for the municipality and the farmers, the relevant stakeholders, to understand the outcome. So the student used data derived from the MODIS instrument, particularly focusing on the comparative application of NDVI and EVI. And then he integrated the climatic variables, rainfall, temperature, to observe their impact on the dynamics. So he did a lot of this work in a Google Earth engine, playing around with different AI instruments. So what he found in this area, if you look at the NDVI from the top and below, showing a similar pattern. Despite this being a low rainfall area, over this period, the rangelands showed the ability to recover after being hit by drought or water scarcity. As you can see, the dips and the ups, the dips which shows the distress, and then the ups showing consistent recovery throughout. And the picture on the upper right-hand picture shows the actual field data in those different years, and then the one below shows the areas that were mapped to be more vulnerable to degradation if the current ecological carrying capacity is exceeded, where the greener areas shows areas of higher productivity, and then the brownish to red, more threatened areas. And then from his findings in both analyzing in between the seasons in both the years, if you look at the picture above, the negative anomalies showed in blue color depicts vegetation stress or drought, and while the positive anomalies in red shows vigor, higher vigor or above normal vegetation, where particularly in 2003 and 2016, it reflects a strong negative anomalies depicting severe drought years. 2010 and 15, strong greening phases with a good vegetation recovery. 21 to 22 was widespread positive anomalies with exceptional vegetation growth during this period. And then the EVI below, as opposed to the NDVI, both indices agree on a drought 2003 and 2016 and greening 2010, 2015, 2021 to 2022. EVI highlights the canopy structure and recovery trends, while NDVI shows a stronger response to extreme events and greenness shifts. Combined, they provide robust vegetation monitoring. If you look at them, again, in terms of their relation to or stimuli to by climate variables, EVI, when it responds to rainfall, it shows a weak positive association, but it remains relatively stable. NDVI, a slight positive trend, as you can see from the graphs. Rainfall, however, alone does not explain vegetation greenness. It might not make sense if you are speaking about an area of normal higher rainfall, but here, because climatological rainfall is low, it doesn't make that, you don't pick that significant difference, but the bigger contributor becomes temperatures, which shows the dynamics. So the implication is such that rainfall has limited influence on vegetation dynamics in this data set. Other factors, temperature, for example, or anthropogenic effects contribute. So when you look at in the pictures on the EVI versus temperature, there's a clear negative trend showing a higher, higher temperatures reduce vegetation greenness, where in NDVI it also shows a negative trend consistent with the EVI. The implication is therefore temperature is a stronger driver of vegetation changes in these areas compared to rainfall, suggesting that stress reduces vegetation productivity. So this correlation showed in here confirms further the findings, where a strong positive correlation of 0.94. Both indices are closely related but differ in sensitivity to the soil atmosphere. And then temperature versus vegetation, the NDVI shows a reflection of 0.55, while EVI is 0.65. So those dynamics are depicted. But then in summary, this tells us that both NDVI and EVI show a weak but positive greening towards trends in both periods under the period of study, though not statistically significant. Severe droughts and greening phases were consistently depicted by both indices as demonstrated. Temperature has a stronger negative impact on vegetation than rainfall, highlighting that heat stress, as a key driver of productivity loss. Rainfall alone becomes a poor predictor of these dynamics, timing, and distribution, and therefore adaptive measures, land management matters more. Both indices are strongly correlated with complementary indicators for monitoring rangeland dynamics. And the implications, therefore, are such that the areas that are highly vulnerable to land degradation are highlighted. And it demonstrates the critical need for adaptive land management strategies to sustain rangeland ecosystems in the face of climate variability. This vegetation climate interactions highlights the significance of short-term climatic impacts. He told me that I should speak in under 10 minutes, so otherwise I would be going to economic significance and or emphasizing the value of this using this technology, spatially demonstrable technologies to the rural farmers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Brilliant. I am now going to be calling upon Lieutenant Colonel Chetty. Lieutenant, he's coming from South African Air Force. We all know Lieutenant. So we don't explain, right? I think he will explain the South African Air Force dashboard. That's what he will be sharing with us this afternoon. Sir, you have 10 minutes.
Afternoon, General. Permission to continue, sir? Hey. Good morning, General. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Kumendra Chetty, and I will be explaining the South African Air Force dashboard and implementation. To do that, I need to give a bit of background. In 2022, as most of you know, the Chief of the South African National Defence Force, General Mapanyana, tasked the Chief of the South African Air Force, Lieutenant General Mbambo, to investigate the feasibility of establishing a Space Command. This task was then given through to Major General Matabula, who put together the Space Command Integrated Planning Team, the SCIPT. As the SCIPT did its investigations, which was also tasked as one of collaboration and partnership, which was one of the key goals, we discovered that the Space Command is indeed feasible and will rest upon a number of pillars. One of those pillars is space situation awareness. So the SAF dashboard ties directly into space situation awareness. So at the moment, it's a pilot project in collaboration with the South African National Space Agency. Thanks to the South African National Space Agency, we're providing the data and the training, the data feed and the training to enable us to establish this dashboard. And the idea behind it is to test a number of outcomes, a number of objectives as we progress to fully establishing a Space Command. One is to establish secure infrastructure, which means we must test the links between our two entities to ensure it's stable, to ensure it's secure from cyber attack, and to ensure the latency is correct to achieve our aims. The second objective we're aiming for is to train SAF personnel to interpret and analyze this data as we grow the agency. And as the project matures, the Air Force will use this pilot project to identify the relevant feeds that are required and that we will then require moving forward in real time to ensure decision-making is made efficiently during planning and execution of all military operations, eventually leading to a recognized space picture sitting within the South African Air Force. To cover this, there are two items that are within the SAF dashboard, which is space weather, solar flare, which covers solar flares, geomagnetic storms, and cosmic activity. I'm not going to go into detail over these topics, as was covered in depth yesterday. And then it's satellite tracking, which is monitoring orbits and preventing collisions at launch. Both of these aspects are critical to national security and military defense operations. Okay, so understanding space weather, a brief recap. Space weather consists of solar flares, coronal mass injections, geomagnetic storms, cosmic rays impacting aviation and satellites, and space wind itself, which can affect satellites. The impacts, as you've heard previously, is it'll disrupt radio communications, which are critical for military operations. It disrupts GPS signals, it affects power grids and pipelines, and there are heightened risks for aviation safety and satellite operations. What's the benefits? For us, we require early warning of geomagnetic storms so we can cater for it. So we can plan appropriately, we can plan our HF communications appropriately. It will help us protect critical infrastructure and help improve safety, aviation safety and navigation to ensure completion of missions. Step off that and talk about satellite tracking, a brief definition. What is it? it's monitoring satellite orbits and positions, it's detecting and predicting debris collisions specifically for launch activities, and it's ensuring operational safety of own space assets. The benefits: avoidance of satellite collisions at launch when we get there, extension of satellite mission lifespan, and then protection of these billion-dollar assets that the nation has put into space. And then the tie-in to national security applications. By monitoring satellites, we will ensure secure military communications, we'll ensure missile early warnings via satellite centers, and then we will ensure monitoring of foreign satellites to make sure no bad actors impact on military operations and we have freedom of movement. I want to jump to a quick case study about SANSA as to why it's beneficial and where it comes in place. Some of you may know, 7th of December 2020, there was a significant solar storm occurred, releasing high-energy particles that threatened satellite operations and aviation communications. SANSA immediately issued real-time warnings to South African and international airliners who were able to update their routes to maintain distance from the storm and maintain communications. They then sent that message to ESCOM as well, who were able to give heightened monitoring of their systems to make sure the grid doesn't fail. So the aim for us is then, once we have this information, we will be able to plan military operations and adapt military operations immediately to make sure the effective outcomes are achieved. So in conclusion, what I would like to say is the SAF dashboard is a collaborative effort, and the aim is space weather monitoring protects sovereignty and infrastructure. So we have to look after our things, and one of our key tasks, just trying to as well, is to not to reinvent the wheel. So with collaboration, we're able to move this quickly. Satellite tracking ensures safety and resilience. It also ensures freedom of movement of own forces, and our covert operations may remain covert. Both are vital for national security and economic stability, and it allows the SANDF to respond with agility and ensure security of military operations. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Chetty. We are now on our last presenter, Ms. Yolanda Ngumalo. You know, Ms. Ngumalo, I don't know your topic, so I would request that you introduce it yourself. Otherwise, you have your 10 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me when I'm standing here? Yeah, okay. All right. Okay, good day, esteemed speakers and guests. I am Yolanda Ngumalo. I'm the CEO of Yaazi. I am a member of the B20 Digital Transformation and Task Force, the G20. I am also a NEOS Satellite Communications and Navigation COP member. I am one of the founding members of the BRICS Youth Energy Agency's Business Energy Work Group, and I have a Master's in Satellite Systems and Applications from CPUT. That is just my introduction. Okay. Okay. The project that I'm presenting today, I can't hear myself, so The project that I'm presenting today is decentralized healthcare through satellite-connected biosensors. Sorry, just getting used to this. So first of all, I'd like to thank SANSA, the National, what is happening? Okay, sorry. The National Research Foundation and Tax Innovation for funding and facilitating this project through the New Frontiers program. Yaazi is honored to be part of the cohort, inaugural cohort of 8 SMEs selected for the New Frontiers, an initiative that champions space-enabled innovation for societal resilience. The support enabled us to conduct a clinical trial and develop first-generation point-of-care diagnostic system capable of serving even the most remote and underserved communities. While the system includes Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and cellular capabilities, its true innovation lies in the long-range radio communication and global satellite infrastructure. Do I also have an echo? Am I hearing an echo of myself? Sorry. allowing diagnostics to function even in the most remote areas that lack cellular coverage. The clinical trial validated both the diagnostic accuracy and the system's ability to transmit results from disconnected regions, demonstrating how space infrastructure can directly support public health. This work bridges two critical gaps: connectivity and healthcare delivery, showing how satellite-linked diagnosis can decentralize healthcare and extend services to the last mile. Okay, our clinical trial has been structured to bridge biomedical innovation with satellite-enabled diagnostics. It has unfolded in four phases, four key phases. The first phase is the clinical trial configuration, where we establish the therapeutic framework, including immune reconstitution therapy, a strategy aimed at restoring immune function in immunocompromised patients, defined the biomarkers panels, such as the cytokine profiles, RNA, DNA ratio signatures to monitor therapeutic molecular targets, efficacy and disease progression, and align biosensor capabilities with molecular targets for real-time tracking. The second phase was the natural compound preparation and clinical dosing, focused on bioactive compounds with immunomodulatory potential. The clinical dosing studies aimed at optimizing development mechanisms and validate sensor responsiveness to biochemical changes. The third phase took the pretrial planning and endpoint finalization, which is basically we finalized clinical endpoints such as RNA expression shifts, DNA methylation patterns, and protein-level biomarkers, and ensured that biomarker collaboration matches clinical threshold for diagnostic relevance. And the fourth phase was the clinical output and the technical synchronization. So that included diagnostic data such as blood, sweat, and saliva, and is transmitted via LoRaWAN and satellite uplinks, enabling diagnostics in remote settings, and then the cloud-based analytics interpret molecular signals to guide personal therapeutics treatments. The clinical impact of our technology is basically providing decentralized diagnostics, such as for instant health monitoring without reliance on terrestrial networks, and RNA, DNA, ratio signatures, insights that enables tailored interventions, and also extend access to underserved populations through satellite-connected biosensors. So what is the health burden in South Africa currently? So over 4.7 million South Africans suffer from hypertension, the most prevalent chronic condition. 1.68 million live with HIV as a chronic condition, requiring regular monitoring. And we have chronic diseases like diabetes, asthma, and cardiovascular conditions account for 73% of all deaths in South Africa. These patients often require routine blood tests, vital monitoring, and medication collection, contributing to hospital overcrowding and long queues. So routine checkups make up the most congestion as far as healthcare facilities is concerned. So what is the connectivity gap? 2.6 billion people globally remain offline. South Africa mirrors these challenges, especially in rural provinces like Limpopo and the Eastern Cape, where 25% of the population still lacks internet access. You also have only 22 million people, about 1/3 of the population, use smartphones, limiting access to digital health tools. 78.6% have some form of internet, most rely on mobile data, which is also quite expensive, and only 20.3% of schools have internet suitable for teaching, highlighting broader infrastructure challenges. Rural users experience 29% slower upload speeds and higher signal outages, especially in Limpopo and the Northern Cape. So why does home diagnostics matter? It reduces missed appointments due to travel costs, which are a major reason for missing appointments. It enables early detection and monitoring of disease progression and regression. It frees up hospital capacity and healthcare healthcare personnel are able to focus on acute and emergency cases. It also supports continuity of care and improves outcomes for patients with chronic conditions. Our system integrates HAI, AIoT architecture, and satellite infrastructure to deliver decentralized diagnostics. The system supports Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, cellular, LoRa, and satellite uplink, enabling flexible deployment across diverse connectivity environments. The HAI capabilities extend beyond pattern and color recognition to include face detection, speech recognition, and image classification, allowing the system to interpret a wide range of diagnostic inputs. Designed for event-based diagnostics and capable of real-time diagnostics, the system supports miniature point-of-care tests such as HIV lateral flow analysis, assays, RNA viral load detection, cytokine and protein level biomarker analysis. Capturing disease progression or immune response at critical intervals, the HAI enables on-device analysis, reducing latency and dependence on centralized labs. Satellite connectivity ensures secure transmission of diagnostic data from remote clinics or homes. And what is our strategic impact of our system? So it supports decentralized healthcare, as I've already mentioned, and also enables precision diagnostics and real-world application of space infrastructure for public health, which aligns with the National Space Conference's theme of societal resilience. Our system doesn't just connect, it thinks. Our platform supports on-device AI interference for image analysis of RNA viral loads, CD4, CD8 ratio analysis, and dermatological conditions, speech and facial recognition for patient interaction and identity verification, pattern recognition in lateral flow assays, and colorimetric RNA-DNA ratio tests. These capabilities allow for still image and live stream analysis, allowing real-time and event-based diagnostics, capturing snapshots of disease progression. And our clinical trial includes RNA viral load detection and immunoreconstitution therapy biomarkers, which are processed locally and transmitted via satellite. HLI enables real-time interpretation of molecular and visual signals, reducing reliance on centralized labs and specialized review. All diagnostic data is encrypted and transmitted via satellite, ensuring secure delivery to national health systems, even in areas without mobile coverage. This supports policy integration, public health surveillance, and rapid response to emerging health threats. Our next milestones for the project will be the focus on technical certification, health regulatory certification and strategic partnership, and use case with public healthcare facilities. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Mtetwa. So we have come to the conclusion of their talks. And in terms of our time, we started at 15 minutes late. So I think we did very well. We are 16:11 now, so we can spend few minutes, maybe up to 10 minutes, just to engage in terms of what has come true from Slido. And if there are also any questions in the floor, we have time, I would also be able to take those. So I am going to select a few from Slido questions. Voting would also be very useful. Then I can just go with those that have been voted for pick-up questions. So there's been a huge interest for Dr. Ayodele. It's very busy. Have you seen it? So I'm going to ask one question for you. There's one that says, don't space data center introduce security complexes? How can we protect them from distractions to avoid financial loss?
Thank you for the interest in my presentation that has led to this question. Now, data centers generally have complexities. Even our data centers on Earth have complexities. Data centers in space have one advantage over our data centers on Earth. For the data center on Earth, for the terrestrial data center, we can figure out the location. So the location can be figured out. A data leak can happen. There are more factors that can lead to security challenges with a terrestrial data center than with a data center in space. For a data center in space, the data will only be received by a ground station at a designated location. So if a person doesn't have access to the ground station location, it's very challenging to get the data center. Now, destruction and financial loss. Yes, about destruction and financial loss. Yes, I acknowledge that anti-satellite weapons are reasonably advanced, but there are also several orbital maneuvering technologies that can enable even space assets now without considering data centers to avoid being destroyed by an anti-satellite threat. Then generally for debris collisions, the debris collision is reasonably advanced even now, that if a data center is put in space, the probability of a collision that can lead to financial losses is reasonably manageable. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's pass it to Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis, you're not able to see, okay? Now that the research has been conducted, right? What are the effective ways in which we can moderate or control the growth of such alien invasive species?
This research that we've done was only a pilot study. There are a couple of other studies, such as the Bioscape study that also concluded this year, that also has the results, but is also on a limited area. So in terms of the entirety of South Africa, there is still a big gap. We don't have, maps for the entire country. So just based on that, we already have, a negative or a disadvantage when it comes to dealing with invasives. So that's just with regards to tackling the issue as a country. But when you do find the invasives, what we've discovered from our field trips is that the general protocol is to address isolated invasives, and then you move further towards more dense areas of invasives. So that way, the more dense areas, they can't get denser with invasives. However, if there's isolated invasives, they can spread. That is the reasoning behind that approach. So once you find the invasives, what the teams do is there's two processes that happens. So firstly, the team comes in and actually cuts down the invasive. That's more the mechanical way of removing the invasive. And then the next process that follows is a chemical way where a team would come in and spray herbicides on the invasives such that they don't grow back up from the roots. However, even though you go through all those processes, what we've also seen is that 6 months later, the invasives can re-emerge. So thus far, there isn't necessarily a true and tested way for permanently removing invasives. This is why monitoring and also mapping invasives is important so that we can keep track of where they are. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you. I pass it to Ms. Mtetwa there, next to you. Ms. Mtetwa, the question is, rain season is coming, and I'm assuming this is a summer rain. I think your research would be beneficiary to municipalities, human settlements, and disaster management. Are they involved in your research?
No, not yet. The government organization that has been involved, though, was DMRE, because this is first and foremost a mining issue, as much as there are weather conditions that exacerbate the TSF impact. At the end of the day, the integrity of the TSF is the source of where the program is. So the next step was to also try and engage those organizations and make sure that they are aware in terms of the solutions that are available, but also making sure that they are co-creating these solutions with us, because there is data that we don't have access to, unfortunately, for various reasons. A lot of red tape, especially with committing to a project that paints the industry, particularly the mining industry, in a bad light. So there was a lot of lawyers involved when you tried engaging at first, and hopefully when we try again, they could be more receptive to the solution, because at the end, we're all trying to solve for one thing: save lives. That's it.
Okay, thank you. We've got another question from Advocate Ntaluba. Outer space data centers. Okay. A great initiative, however, in line with treaties, how do we ensure that the interface of outer space and airspace protocols are enforced?
Okay, the data centers in space will most probably be launched in low Earth orbit or medium Earth orbit. That altitude is significantly far from the lower to middle troposphere, where our aircraft operate. So they are significantly, the separation is significant. So most aircraft, our conventional aircraft, operate in the troposphere. That's civil aircraft. Maybe if they are special aircraft, they may operate maybe upper troposphere to maybe mesosphere. But then that's it. The data centers in space will be launched outside the Earth's atmosphere. So there is very little, the risk of collision is very low. So there is no threat being posed between these two applications. Thank you for the interest in the presentation.
Maybe I can also allow the floor to speak. I'll take 2 questions. No questions on the floor? Oh, sorry. Yes.
Facilitator, thank you very much for session solving real life. Just a generic question that I would want to ask, which I actually wrote. If you were to develop a policy brief which I hope is the aim of us being here, to the responsible convener, so that they take it to the responsible cabinet clusters, so that these inform the medium-term planning framework 2025 to 2030. What would you say is a key policy directive? I'm saying this because there is the issue of the clinical tests. And the clinical tests, they are assuming that AI or data is obtainable in the absence of data subjects and the necessary consent. How do we deal with the realities of what we call ethical clearance in any research of that nature? That's one. So I'm looking at a policy brief that side. Then there's a policy brief regarding the space. Look, there's an outer space where we want to keep these. The reality is, yes, in the outer space, in terms of international law, everybody plays responsibly. But it ends up in the ground. In the ground, you are dealing with the infrastructure. And one of my questions was, who owns that infrastructure that is in the ground? Because infrastructure determines ownership. it determines also the data privacy, the lawful processing of data, which has 8 principles in South Africa and 7 principles within the EU. Lastly, coming to my own defense force, beautiful presentation, but help me take what we have done, triangulate it with the Defense Artificial Intelligence Research Unit. How do you see the interface in terms of these two, insofar as us claiming the cyberspace, the airspace, and the outer space, which is indeed our mandate? Thank you.
The first one.
Ethical clearance for clinical stuff.
Thank you, ma'am, Chair, General. Thank you for the question, ma'am. In terms of the South African National Defence Force, we currently have multiple projects on the go that cover all 3 aspects. The team leaders from those projects and the teams from those projects are constantly interacting with each other to ensure that the SNDF as a whole has a unified approach as we go forward. So there's continuous cross-collaboration within the SNDF and then with partner organizations to ensure that it's cost-effective and sufficient, that we don't reinvent the wheel and we partner and use the assets and capabilities already in this country. So that is happening as we speak, ma'am. Unfortunately, I can't go into much detail regarding what's happening.
I think the first question, ma'am, no one actually fully understood, or we didn't get it correct. Maybe you may rephrase it.
Is very simple. Starting with Uprof. If you were to extract a policy decision, right, which you want the president to actually use to drive the agenda of the country through the strategic planning for the next 5 years, what would be the policy decision, right? And I think with you, I went further to talk about the nuances between the infrastructure, ground-based, and the data. Yes, the data, you just elevated the platform to the outer space, but it ends on the ground. And then you have an infrastructure. The person who owns the infrastructure is the one who knows the data security measures. So I want us now to address the lawful data processing paradigms. So how do we deal with that? But the question that goes through us all, I would want a policy brief. What would be your policy brief for the president? Because all these are solutions that we would need in South Africa, not tomorrow, but yesterday. So that there's funding for them.
Thank you for the question and for the interesting the presentation. So generally for a data center in space, upload of data to the data center will be done from a ground station. Download of data from that data center will also be done at a ground station. If there is connection to the internet, that means that ground station will be connected to the internet exchange point. So an internet exchange point is a very secure facility. It's not a place where people can just breeze in and breeze out. So security on data management will be implemented in data sovereignty or data regionality. That will be implemented at the internet exchange points. If request is made from a data stored on a data center in space, where policies, where they will specify, data from this data should be allowed to go to this country, this data should be allowed to be accessible from this geographical coordinates, that policy will be implemented at the internet exchange point, managing the data, who has access to the data, who can conduct an upload, who can access a downloaded data, will be implemented at the internet exchange point. In addition to that, the ground station facility in this case, generally ground station facilities are also very secured spots. It's not, a ground station facility is not a place that an unauthorized person can just breeze in and breeze out. Most organizations that even have ground station facilities, a lot of employees don't know there is a ground station. Only few people who work in that area know that there's a ground station. So by limiting who has access to a ground station, definitely if a breach occurs, it can be traced. And a ground station will not be a device that you can access from the internet. So the cyber threat is fairly low. Now, a policy, what policy could be considered? The policy could consider the benefit of data centers in space. Like I said during the presentation, we can't say we don't want terrestrial data centers. They are important, they will remain important. Policies to ensure that they can operate fairly, they can operate well for the operators in that space will need to be retained. What policy briefs can we make for keeping our data centers in space? Data centers in space have security. Your data cannot easily be stolen. It's not easy for someone to break into a data center in space. Very few persons have that kind of capability. That's the first benefit. The second benefit is that we can process all the Earth observation data we get from satellites in space. We can process them right there in space. What that means is everybody who uses Earth observation data or everybody who accesses Earth observation data, if they have to pay for a transponder to send the data down to them, you have to pay for data, unprocessed data to be transmitted down to them. With a data center in space, they are only paying for processed data to be sent. They don't have to worry about paying for a lot of raw data, some of which they may not need at the end of the day to be sent to them. So it has a reduced bandwidth costs as well. So and there are other significant benefits to putting our stuffs there in space, especially from a perspective of complementing what the terrestrial data center can offer, at least in the near term. Maybe in the far future, we can have everything move to space. That would be fine. Thank you.
George, you will wrap it up, right? The discussion. No, brilliant, and then George.
Let me be specific to a medium-term development plan, for example. A policy directive will be, medium-term development plan would have specific interventions, development interventions that need to be implemented on the ground. A policy directive will be, here is geospatial data, Earth observation data, freely available. Before any development is implemented, use it, let it be used, quickly used for feasibility of such implementation, so that then we can determine the risk of disasters and sustainability of such a development. Therefore, you don't have to waste any data in futile development.
Chair, can I go?
Yes.
Yeah, what I would add to what Brilliant said is that there needs to be an understanding from the state that these are national assets or these projects have implications for national security. That understanding has to be coined somewhere in the policy. The second thing is there needs to be some ethical statements that will go hand in hand with these projects or these initiatives of national importance. And the last thing would be some kind of guidance, standard operation procedures. What do you do when you are involved in these kind of things so that at least the country is protected? You can't just wake up and do whatever you want, anyhow you want it. There has to be some statements to say when you operate these things to protect the nation, this is how you do it. That kind of guidance needs to be fitted into that kind of policy. And I think because this is an open space, if we leave it out there, the wolves will take advantage. So those things needs to be brought in with proper considerations without restricting development or science. But yeah, there needs to be some kind of roadmap there. Thank you.
Thank you. I think in terms of our conclusions for these sessions, I think we have learned quite a lot in terms of national platforms which are mainly focusing in monitoring. And we had different aspects of monitoring in terms of vegetation species, animal species, and as well as how do we make sure that we are ready or prepared in terms of disaster when it hits us. And we all know that there's natural and there's man-made disasters, but how do we then be able to be prepared when these hit us? And of course, we cannot ignore the fact that we have a technology that is advancing very quickly. And how do we then tap on that technology and advance in terms of our own country, our national plans, and the applications that we may utilize to respond to service delivery and to a public benefit. And how do we also at the same time make sure that our country is safe? We monitor what happens in space for our security. And we've also learned that with the use of EO, we can also assess the disease in terms of our own human health. The clinical trials that we have here, there's one of the projects that is coming from the frontiers of the EO. And I think I want to tap on what our last question from Ma'am sitting in front. Yesterday we had a privilege to listen to Ms. Nofneko Majaja, who comes from DTIC, and she shared with us quite a few points in terms of the policy in space and what has happened, and the review that is also meant to take place. And I think it gives us an indication that we have kind of a structured or rather coordinated platform as a country. It's just a matter of how then do we collectively engage, collaborate in these different initiatives, and how then our space strategy is defined. And we have recently reviewed, or rather evaluated our national strategy, and we have made quite a good stride in terms of the progress on that strategy. But there's still more that we need to do, and I'm hoping then that would lead us to be able to plan for the next coming years in responding to your MTF that you were asking. But we need these guiding documents that define the agenda for our country. So in those words, I would then rather say thank you to our panel for the day. You were very great. You listened, you followed the rules. Thank you very much. And to our audience this afternoon, thank you for your patience and for your interest. I quite take a lot on the Slido. It's very interesting there. And I think, Ayodela, you must go check that Slido. There's quite a lot of questions for you there that you can process in your own private space. Thank you for this session. And I'm assuming then it's the end of the day. You may all have a good evening. Thank you.